So welcome to Up Close. Meet the poet behind the verse. And what do you guys see right now? Real quick, because it's, of course, this has to be funny.
We see the gallery view of everyone right now.
Okay, so, well, tonight is special. It's our 1-year anniversary, and we're having a little technical difficulties once again, but I'm going to be skipping my usual intro to speak on behalf of our anniversary. So in the beginning of 2021, we were in the midst of the pandemic. Most of the venues were on Zoom, and I had just logged off with an open mic with a featured poet. When it dawned on me that of all the poets I'd listened to that night, I didn't know any of them really. I didn't know who they were as people. And maybe one poem stuck out, but there were so many different people that half an hour and a half span. It made me start to think about how would it be great if we had an event that focused on only one poet with the goal of getting to know the person behind the poems. And here we are 1 year later, and I am incredibly grateful to all the awesome poets I've interviewed over the last year, especially the first 6 months when I was learning how this all worked. Miigwech, thank you. I have received so much from all of you. Miigwech, and thank you to our regular viewers, our audience that comes back every month. You know who you are. And to those who come to view us on Facebook, or when you can come on an occasional Zoom audience. Thank you, big thank yous to our sponsors, the League of Minnesota Poets, for allowing us to use their Zoom account. And I have to give a very, very big thank you to Julie Martin, the woman behind the scenes. I couldn't do it without you, girl. And now I will hand it over to her, for she has a couple of words to say too.
And I, on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you, River, for this generous thing that you've done in highlighting the work of other people. So each month, you have spent a lot of time helping all of us know each other better. And like you said, you started this during the pandemic at a time when we were so isolated, and you kept this community going. And so a heartfelt thank you to you for all that you've done. And each time you've done this, you've upped the game a little bit. And so it's been fun to watch your technology skills grow. Yeah, so thank you.
Jeepers, I'm all teary now. But, well, now let's sit back and let's get this show rolling. Our May Up Close poet, I'm so excited, is George Colburn, a man I have utmost respect for as a poet and a person. George is an award-winning and published poet, loving husband to his wife, Libby, father to 2 daughters, and a proud grandfather. He is the son of deaf parents and an Air Force veteran. Libby and George have been married for 41 years and live in St. Paul. You will most likely find them in the summer at their cabin up north with the fresh smell of bread in the air. George's poetic voice is unforgettable. His subjects resonate with men of his generation, while his gift of storytelling catches the rest of us. In 2019, George was awarded Veterans Voice Award from the Minnesota Humanities Commission, and he was also awarded that year the Order of Shakespeare Medal from Motivational Stripes, a worldwide poetry forum. George has published 4 books and is in numerous poetry anthologies and literary magazines. With that, without further ado, let's welcome George.
Well, thank you, River, and thank you, Julie, and thank you to the League of Minnesota Poets.
Thank you for being here with us. It's been 1 year. This time it's a little, well, we still had some difficulties starting off, jeepers, huh? But, so I'm going to start this first question going a little deep. You said you're being raised by deaf parents made you look at language differently. And I have 3 questions about that. One is, what intrigued you the most about language when you were a boy?
Well, what I found was that I was interpreting for my parents a lot at a very early age. And I came to realize that just repeating the words that were said out loud into sign language wasn't enough. I needed to do some interpreting and some realigning of the concepts. So I started digging into language and learning more specific vocabulary that would make that a little easier task.
What intrigues you the most about language today?
I think that there are so many nuances to language that it's very easy to say exactly what you mean. And I try to do that. And I try to find the language that works that way so that what I'm saying is clear. It's not fuzzy. I like that.
Now this one might be kind of hard. Is there any way you can describe how you perceived language as a boy interpreting for your parents? How did you perceive it, like from a little boy's?
Well, you know, when I was growing up, I learned sign language about the same time I learned to speak. And I think that the 2 of them together worked very well to help me develop an understanding and an appreciation of language. But there was one moment in particular that I will never forget. I often went to different events with my parents that involved the deaf community in various ways. And at one time, we went on a picnic in rural Minnesota where I was introduced to a woman who was both blind and deaf. And the only way you could communicate with her was to sign into her cupped hands, and she would read your sign language through the touch of her cupped hands. Additionally, I found out in talking to her that she was able to tell color by touch. And I found that so amazing. It really made me want to be an expert communicator.
Totally, that's pretty cool. And the last about this is how did poetry fit into all of this?
Well, you know, I used to write. I started in 3rd grade writing love poems that I would sell for a nickel to lovesick boys to give to their girlfriends. And I got a lot of lunch money that way. But of course, initially they were pretty silly, very basic rhymes and, you know, not very creative. But over time, I learned how to twist the language a little bit. And by the time I got to high school, I was selling poetry for $5 a piece.
Oh, you made a profit. It's fun. So we'll bounce a little forward now. When you were 18, you enlisted and regretted it the very first morning when you woke up. Why was it so difficult besides the obvious?
Well, I had gone to a Catholic military high school, Cretan High School, and so had my brother. And I really didn't like it very much. I didn't like the religion classes. I didn't like the military classes. Um, in religion class, I remember that I used to write poems that challenged the tenets of the church. And when the Christian brother that taught English didn't have a syllabus, he would ask me to read one of my poems, and the class would discuss for an hour how I was wrong. The military side of it, I really hated it. I thought it was stupid. In fact, I flunked military and had to go to summer school for military. You can imagine what that was like, marching around all summer long. But my older brother was a conscientious objector and really against the Vietnam War. And we had a lot of discussions about the war and about whether it was justified or a civil war and so on. And I was a doubting Thomas. I had to see for myself. And so I enlisted on my 18th birthday. There were also some issues at home that I had to get away from. But when I ended up in basic training and I woke up that first morning, I thought to myself, oh, what have you done? Because I knew at that moment, like in military class in high school, that somebody with a little less intelligence than I had the power of life and death over me. And that was scary, and it made me feel stupid.
Yeah. You made it though. You got out in 72.
Yes.
And then you started college. You went to college.
Yeah,
And
when I got out of the Air Force, I knew that if I didn't go right to school, I probably never would. So I used the GI Bill, and I went to Metropolitan Community College. And I was lucky enough that first year to have a GPA that Hamlin University recruited me with a half scholarship. And I spent the last 3 years at Hamlin and then on to graduate school at Indiana University.
well, and Hamlin is when you were an English major and in the theater and worked for the paper.
Yes,
And you met your wife, Libby.
that's
life
right.
Sweetheart.
That's right. I was an English and theater communications major, double major. I edited the literary magazine. I ran the Office of Veterans Affairs. I worked for the student newspaper. I was in National Collegiate Players. In fact, my junior year, they had something called an honors day. And much to my wife's parents' surprise, I stood up 12 different times to accept awards and be inducted into leadership societies and honor societies. And I think it surprised the heck out of them.
Well, I'm curious if poetry had something to do with sweeping. Well, you sweep Libby off her feet with poetry there.
Actually, no. I think the main reason that she liked me is that I could make her laugh.
That's important. That's an important quality. Does she have one of your poems? Does she have a favorite?
She does. It's called The Best Bread in the World. And she said she likes it because it has a certain tone to it about the creative spark that most people have to bring to whatever work they do.
She's an artist herself, isn't she?
She was a costume designer for the theater. And in fact, she had a little logo. She used to draw renderings for costumes for the different plays that she did. And she always made a point of putting a little tiny Dagwood character in the bottom corner of her drawings.
Her little mark. And around this time, you published your first book too.
Yes,
It was the year I was,
1973.
yep, the year I was born. And I was,
1973, I put together a self-published book called Payday. And I carried it around to all the college bookstores, to Savrin's Books in the West Bank, to Hungry Mind up by McAllister, to lots of the Twin Cities bookstores. And as it happened, I put it on commission. They wanted 15 to 20%, which was fine with me. And I ended up selling almost 300 copies.
wow. You have, can we hear a poem from it today?
Sure. Here's the book. It's called Payday: Poetry, Prose, and Possibilities. And the title poem is called Payday. We all have our way of throwing sevens. Jack curled lip and swore and spit a dance on wiggling legs and backbone, let fly the cube, slashing wrist back with a pat of his ass, and he screamed, "There it is." Joe closed eyes, clicked dice between ringed fingers, rolled them across palms, talking low and solemn, released with the weight of his body bending over, and clapped. Me, concentrating into cupped hands, magic breath and smile, ease back stylistically, jerk forward and back my wrist with confidence. Somewhere in the back alley lay ragged dollar bills where we scuffed shoes running from the police.
Well, today you're actually going to, we're going to have a giveaway like we usually do. And you are going to give 3 books away, right? So like most times we'll play the number game. And so whoever gets closest to the number without going over wins. There'll be 3 numbers between the 1 and 50. And so each of you has 1 guess you can put in the chat. And good luck. And the books that George is, Payday isn't printed anymore, right?
No, that's out of print.
So
But,
George's other 3 books is what
Punctuated Echo, Milking the Dragon, and An Undeclared War.
we will get to each one of those. First, I wanted to ask, I mentioned earlier that your work often resonates with men of your generation. Why do you think that?
Well, I think primarily because we have a shared experience of having grown up in interesting times. The Vietnam War, the upheaval in American society that was going on. I think there's a lot of shared experience there with the men of my age and women of my age, and that connects.
That totally makes sense. This is an observation that I made. It seems that to me that when you were in school and college, you were working towards your passions. Then you had a career that ended up to be, for 30 some years, that'd be a completely different direction. But then when you retired, you've come back to your passions. Am I right about this?
No, you're right. When I graduated from Indiana University, I got a master's degree in creative writing. I discovered how very much money poets make these days. And, and I decided that I needed a different kind of job. So I ended up going back to work at my undergraduate university at Hamlin University. And I ran the acquisitions and accounting department. I learned a little bit about how to be a reference librarian. And while I was there, I could take free classes. So I took a lot of classes in accounting and in data processing.
Okay.
And after a few years, a friend of mine who had gone to work for Lawson Software moved into sales and told me that there was a systems analyst position available and that I might be just perfect for it. So being a librarian, the first thing I did was I looked up a reference book. The government puts out every year. It's called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. And it tells you what jobs there are in the country, what the prerequisites are, what the salary range is, and so on. And I found out that a systems analyst, the primary responsibility was the ability to communicate. And I thought, well, okay, English major, theater communications, I can probably do this. And as it happened, the same day that I was offered a job at Lawson Software, I was offered the assistant controller position at Hamlin University. Of course, the offer from Hamlin was half what the offer was from Lawson, so I went to work for Lawson. After I worked at Lawson for 12 years, I moved to SAP, a software company out of Germany, and I worked there for an additional 19 years. So for about 31 years, I ended up traveling Sunday night to Thursday night, almost every week. I went to Europe quite a lot. And of course, when you do that, you stay for 2 and 3 weeks at a time to make it cost effective. But had I not had an angel of a wife, this couldn't have happened. She took on so much responsibility for the family and for the kids. I was home most every weekend, which was good. I got a lot of airline miles, hotel points, and rental car points, so we had some great family vacations, but it was tough on both of us. I think in some ways, though, it made our love for each other a bit stronger, to be away and then together so much.
That's, well, you know, you actually mentioned my next question, and it was about your family vacations, because you said that was one of the perks, the only perk to your job is that you guys got to had some of the greatest family vacations. So I was wondering where was your favorite that you guys took?
Oh boy, if you ask my kids, they will say when we went to Cancun. Because we went to Isla Mujeres, we went to Chichen Itza, we went to a lot of eco parks when we were there. My youngest daughter, Emily, the very first thing she learned to do, she was, I think, 11 or 12 at the time. She went down to the pool and learned how to order drinks and fill them to the room. So she was nobody's fool. But I also think that one of the best vacations was when we went to England for the Millennium, and we visited the Millennium Dome, and we got a lot of tours around England. We went to Stonehenge, and we went to Dover, and we went to Windsor and Eton, and I think travel generally is so important because it makes you realize the world is very small and people are pretty much the same wherever you go. I do have to say one thing, though, that is a continuing embarrassment. My wife and I went to France, and we stayed at a hotel outside on the rings of Paris. They call them arrondissements. And one morning we went down to breakfast in the hotel, and there was a family from Texas on the other side of the restaurant. And I heard a man say, you know, we Americans like our bacon crisp. You want me to go talk to the chef? And my wife and I wanted to crawl under our table. We were so embarrassed. Ugly Americans still exist.
Yes. Yes, it's, well, I think we need to hear from one of your books. How about that? You published those like 3 years in a row.
I did.
2018, 19, 20.
Yeah.
The first one was the punctuated ego.
Echo.
Oh, echo. Sorry. Yeah. What could you tell us about it a little bit and read here a poem?
Well, I started, I have a neighbor across the street, Juana, who ran witness writers workshops one Saturday a month. And after coaxing me for a couple of years, she finally convinced me to go to witness writers. And I liked it so much, and it kind of spurred my creative juices again. So that prompted me to put this book together. And I found that when I started writing again, I almost couldn't stop. I wrote every day, and my output was phenomenal. Not all of it good, but still the discipline was a good thing. So then I decided I'd start putting books together, and this was the first one I did. Would you like me to read something?
Oh yeah. Oh, I thought, yeah. I thought we were gonna, yeah, we would love to hear a poem from it.
Okay. This one I like in particular because after I showed it to Mike Finley, he put it on his website, and I was very, very flattered. And it's still out there in the internet ether. It's called Safety in Numbers. If they could target us individually, we'd all believe what the president says and wait with bated breath for a speech by the Speaker of the House, or maybe even the Senate Majority Leader, and we'd be free from every liberal tweeter. If they could target us individually, there would not be an immigrant problem or trouble with the southern border. We'd have a high-tech high wall guarding us against criminal spillover from Latin America, from secret meetings and hostile esoterica. If they could target us individually, the rest of the world would respect us, and would respect the flag, of course, and anyone who didn't would be shunned by the best of America that's left of us, by the rest of America that's best for us. If they could target us individually, we'd be shutting down the windmills, gutting hydropower, and shutting out the sun completely from our energy grid. The world would be made of oil and gas, and we'd consume every bit of it en masse. If they could target us individually, no one would be gay or transgender, Men in pants and women in dresses, children taught that straight is better and that mixing sexes like mixing races is best left out of American spaces. If they could target us individually, there would be no disharmony at all. Only old white men at the very top, while the rest of us keep silent and just do the work they need us to. And perhaps they'd even feed us too.
Oh, that was a funny one. Okay, so then in 2019, you published Milking the Dragon. Can you describe that one?
Well, Milking the Dragon was a kind of a combination of photography and poetry. I've got about 20 to 25 photos taken from mostly northern Minnesota, but also other places around the state. And it was a lot of fun to put together. I think I came close to putting together an ensemble in this book. I knew a little bit more having published Punctuated Echo. Let me read one or two from this one.
Yes, please.
The first one, my wife and I watched a program about the gentle art of Swedish death cleaning. And I think the poem speaks for itself. It's called Death Cleaning. It's designed to prevent your poor offspring from having to deal with you when you're dead. It doesn't consider all those small little somethings left over when you're stiff in your bed. Your belly laughs, for example, and your snickers. What could they possibly do with those? Your fingers, those wrinkled old pickers, stray hairs on the inside of your nose. Wishes that have lived with you for years. The unphotogenic side of your face, the tiny bumps on the edge of your elderly ears, the hairs that were never in place, the indigestion you've dealt with since Eisenhower, your big toes. No one should want your big toes. The tingling of your skin when you shower, the part of you that nobody knows. There's one other one that I like quite a lot. When I was traveling as a software consultant, I often spent time investigating the area I was in to see what was out there. And I ended up going to a revival meeting in Tennessee. And I came away with this. It's called the Revival Tent. It was absolutely huge and immaculately white. Stair-step children met you on the way in. Welcome, brother. Glad to see you here tonight. Help yourself to the nourishment before we begin. All along the sides were tables full of holy food, hot dogs, beans, grits, biscuits, and gravy, soup, the kind of things sure to do a hungry sinner good. Not a green or vegetable anywhere in that group. Rabbit food can't be found on a divine food shelf, I thought, but I kept that thinking to myself. I took a seat on a folding chair and sunk down. The earth was soft, and I'm a massive penitent. I looked and saw that many others had also found the earth too soft, their souls too big and bent. My knees high, seat low, a pose most distressing, but I was here for salvation, so thought it justified that I should feel some pain to get a holy blessing. The preacher wore Armani and had a lordly stride. He was loud but short as some tiny North Pole elf, I thought, but I kept that thinking to myself. Well heeled does not mean well sold, he said. The surprised assembly began to laugh out loud. You must give unto others, share your daily bread. The children passed woven baskets to the crowd. Let go of worldly possessions and shed your pride. Admit your sins, humble yourself before the Lord. Be willing to let our saintly Savior be your guide. And always, always give more than you can afford. Here's a prime example. He gives only to himself, I thought, but I kept that thinking to myself. The tent began to swelter. Programs became fans. Preachers seemed cool and immune to the heat. He ranted on loudly about making heavenly plans. The righteous stood and began to stamp their feet. A pestilential frenzy took hold of that celestial crowd. Amen, amen, they wailed. Lord, Lord, they cried. The chanting rose higher. Souls now hotly stirred. A Cadillac pulled up next to the tent, and he got inside. Well, that's a funny way to shed your earthly wealth, I thought, but I kept that thinking to myself.
That must have been quite an experience.
Yeah, well, you know, I've also seen a few Sunday services at the mega churches, and it's not that different there. I was stunned when during the pandemic, one of the biggest mega churches of all refused to let people come in and take a rest. I thought Christianity has a lot to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree with that. Well, that's comes from someone that went to high school at the Catholic church or a Catholic high school. Religion is a hard one.
Yeah. I had a particularly tough time with Catholicism. It started when I was about 10 years old, and one of the priests in the church told me that my mother could never go to heaven because she was Lutheran. And if there's anything that drives a kid away from church, that's probably it. So I started leaving home as if I was going to church and having a few cigarettes under an overpass, spinning by the church to pick up a bulletin so that I could bring it home and make it look like I had actually gone to the service. But
was your father Catholic?
my father was Catholic, and he had a very basic understanding about religion. His understanding was you go to church or you get whooped. That was the end of it. That was the end of it. So
the tactic of fear.
yeah.
Well, then in 2000 or 2020, you published The Undeclared War. I'm guessing this one has to do with Vietnam.
Yeah. Toward the last part of my Air Force service, I was in the Philippines, and every 3 months in the Philippines, I had to spend a month in Vietnam. Almost all my time was spent in Cam Ranh Bay, although I had trips to Da Nang and to places in Thailand. But I realized that the US was not there to win. And I think that hurt me more than just about anything. So many other GIs, their sole focus was to get home alive in one piece, mentally and physically. And it hit me pretty hard. When I got out of the service and I went back to Metropolitan Community College, I started working for a program called Veterans Upward Bound. And it was designed to help veterans who didn't have a high school diploma get their GED. But what happened was most of them first needed mental or drug counseling, food stamps, a place to live, a lot of the basics before they could even begin to think about high school. And as it happened, Wounded Knee occurred at the same time that I was recruiting for them and teaching. So I got to know a lot of veterans' stories. I suppose it's true with any war, but in Vietnam particularly, Vietnam veterans didn't want to talk to you if you didn't have their experience. They were closed, and only someone who had shared some of that experience would they open up to. So I was pretty successful in recruiting people, but I came to understand an awful lot about the war. I'll read one poem from this book. It's called In the Midst of War. She led me to the marketplace and I bought a big bag of rice, some dried fish, bananas. Then she led me down a dusty road toward a corrugated tin roof shack next to the tracks, where 14 from 4 generations lived like sneak thieves vying for space to sleep or sit. When grandmother saw us and the food, she cleared a space for me to rest while she cooked. And in between stirring and mixing, introduced me to several thin young men and women whose deep-set eyes told mixed, silent stories, and many cheerfully oblivious, hungry children. When the food was ready, she sat me down and indicated I should eat. I asked her to join me, but you go first, she said. You go first. They gathered around me smiling, watching until I stopped. Many of those lookers hadn't eaten in days, but I was the guest who brought the food, so I had to fill my belly first. I was being taught a lesson in manners beyond hunger. The food disappeared quickly after that. I was humbled and embarrassed by this unexpected propriety and stared through the sunlit open doorway. Where does that road lead? I asked everyone. Nowhere, they said. That road leads nowhere. You can stay here as long as you want.
Just a minute there. Well, let's flip the, and you have one of your favorite poets that you have put aside to read for us.
Yes, that is William Carlos Williams. I grew up with, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Allen Ginsberg, Gregory Corso, John Haynes, so many poets, a lot of the beat poets. But one of the ones that I loved the most was William Carlos Williams. And a poem in particular that I liked is No Plums, or This Is Just to Say. This is just to say that I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. And I liked that poem so much that I wrote one as a counterpoint to that. And it's called No Plums for William Carlos Williams. There were no plums in the icebox, although I was sure they were there. I searched the hydrator and beyond and the depths of my mind, but there were no plums in the icebox. The people on the bus on my way home probably wondered what the smile in my eyes meant as I sat anticipating, but there were no plums in the icebox. Their sheen unsurpassed in my mind's eye, opalescent ruby sheen and gentle cleft from stem to stigma like your sweet rump, but there were no plums in the icebox, and I could not conjure them from the mist as I opened the chilled door. Just an absence I could not let go of, but there were no plums in the icebox for me, selfish me, to madly devour. No juicy drip down my chin to savor as I savor you, so sweet and so cold.
Ooh, I happen to like yours better. Well, I have one more question, and that is, what is your muse, George?
Oh my. I would say my muse is memory. I feel an incredible memory. I remember almost everything that has ever happened to me. And I use it like a toolbox to help me write. In particular, I remember feelings. I remember emotions. I remember how I may have affected people with a word, with a touch. That's a lot of ammunition to draw from.
And then do you try to mimic it on paper or like paint a picture of it with words?
I think painting a picture with words is a good way to put it. I love imagery, and I love twisting language to give you a new insight, to make you think of something maybe you haven't thought of before. If you don't mind, River, you mentioned a while back my wife's favorite poem of mine.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to go ahead and read it, may I?
I'd love to hear it.
It's called The Best Bread in the World, a poem for occupations. Sometimes I wonder if everything he touches becomes flour. He needs a new bust of Caesar and sells it as pumpernickel. I've seen his powdered studio reek of Picasso cubes and Dali madness. Later, he fills them with creams and jellies, carefully marking a place for their tray in his 6 o'clock window display. This one was made during my Dadaist period. He teaches a half-asleep clerk. A tort with fur. Not rousing even a leavening smile, he retreats, believing that genius could never compete with morning, and attacks the sweet rolls with an icing palette, knowing someday he'll write a book without yeast.
Yay! We gotta go to figure out the giveaway real quick. Did you get that text I sent you, Julie?
I got it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So we
Okay.
didn't communicate beforehand. Who are
Okay,
we?
so River sent me the magic numbers, and the thing is you have to come close but not go over. And of course Barry won because Barry always wins.
Barry does always win.
His guess was 12 and he came the closest to 18 without going over.
Hey, was that your
And-
number?
Yes, 18 was my number. Charlie won. He guessed 7, and that was the closest to 11 without going over. Charlie M. Sorry, Charlie. And then Hardy guessed right on the
Ooh.
number, 34.
Okay, so the order of the books, I would love my number to go with the dragon one.
Oh,
Mine was 11. Who got 11?
11
Was Charlie M.
Charlie M.
And George, which one do you want to go with your number?
How about an undeclared war?
Okay, who was the closest to 34? I think that was Hardy, right?
That was Hardy.
You won, dear.
Oh,
All right.
then-
And then Barry has
Yeah.
Barry has the third one.
Yep. So you guys put your address in send it a direct link to George.
so George, I'm going to be there on Friday. Maybe you could bring the book then.
I will.
Okay, great.
I mean, black coffee?
Yes,
Oh,
Yeah.
wait, is that when? Oh,
that's this Friday.
man.
Me too.
And
I was
that's
gonna
for
try to
you,
make it
Hardy,
too.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I get George's book, and if I come up with the $19 bill, I'll get Charlie's book too. I'm working on the $19 bill.
I've got change, don't worry.
Oh, Charlie, bring your book. Yeah, bring your book
I'm
for
going
sure.
to- Yeah, I will.
Well, here, I'm
River-
gonna sign us off of Facebook and then we can all sit and chat after.
Well,
But
can I read one more before we close?
Oh, yeah, so yes, of
Sure.
course we can. We can.
I wrote one last night that I like, and I'd like to share it. It's called The Composer. Chip away at everything that is not horse. Michelangelo.
Hmm.
The verve in the music is a sweet torture. The uplift raises my eyebrows with it. Resonant notes engulf my ears completely and are swallowed into me like a purification. My hands dance between the movements as if I rule them like a pagan conqueror. Ears elope in melodies to be saved and savored. One more vibration, one more instrumental vote carries me to close my eyes and transports me well beyond the lucid sounds made manifest in this echo chamber of my soul's creation. Beyond the page, into insanity's purest voice, which stings like honey on my tongue, which steals me toward a beautiful death, which makes the world a tinny thing that I create anew by birthing lyric soul.
Thank you, George.
And thank you again, River and Julie and League of Minnesota Poets. Very much appreciated.
I'm so happy we had you back and this time. So next month, actually, June 1st, I will be interviewing Julie.
Oh,
So that'll be pretty cool. And Sarah is gonna be my Julie, actually. So, but let me take us off Facebook. Bye, Facebook.